communications regime, where not just the top 3 or 4 people buy in to the need for crisis preparation, but where the distributed management of the company worldwide all is in consensus about the absolute necessity of doing this preparation for crisis.
Maybe a difficult question to answer, but would you, on occasions, advise clients, never let this situation get to court, for example, if like with a faulty product, settle this out of court, deal with the family? Are you giving that type of advice to companies?
Well, usually we give advice, and there's a lawyer sitting right next to us when we offer such counsel.
Right.
So sometimes we will say, come out and speak the truth and put the facts out there, and the lawyer will be saying, well, no, don't do that. Let's cut a quiet deal and hope this never comes out. So there is kind of a friction quite often between the role of the public relations counselor and the role of the legal counsel who's there on these issues. I would say that in many cases we try to avoid making a negative proposition famous. And when you think, you know communication so well, Paul, think about it. What causes news? It's the clash between things. It's not different shades of gray. It's black versus white. It's not people agreeing about things. It's people disagreeing. So we try to avoid these clashes. So if something can be handled in a more quiet, harmonious, everyone wins type way, we will not disagree with that counsel, provided this does not compromise coming out with the truth in the first place. Right.
I was surprised recently when somebody sued a company and got a very small compensation reward, and the judge said, Japan, there's no such thing as punitive damages in Japan. We're not known in the society for that. As an American, does that strike you as strange? Is that unreasonable in some situations?
I think it's present in most situations. When you think about why an issue has become a crisis issue, it's usually because there's something that's happened that's so horrible, so wrong, it's hurt somebody. There's a victim, and the victim often has legal recourse. I think, to your point, class action. I think when a Japanese consumer reads in the newspaper that an American company is facing a class action lawsuit, even though there may be a very small number of people actually involved in that class action, it makes it seem far more broad than it might be.
Right.
Automobile manufacturers have to face this a lot. Often a car will explode, or there'll be an accident. Somebody will be horribly killed, and there will be a lawsuit. The company will be sued. Now, even though the company is being sued and there's a lawsuit involved, does the company say, the matter's before the courts, it wouldn't be appropriate to comment? Or does the company say, well, we believe in the safety of our vehicles. Our information shows that this was an unusual circumstance. Does the company defend itself? I mean, our firm founded the practice of litigation public relations more than 20 years ago. So these are the kinds of questions that we deal with, and there's no easy answer.
Litigation public relation means what? Means that as a company is in a state of litigation, you advise them what they should and shouldn't be saying, or how they should behave and should not behave?
Lawyers make very bad PR people. I mean, many lawyers think that because they're good at the law, of course they're good at virtually anything in society.
Yes.
Different professions suffer from that.
Right.
But actually, a lawyer's response is often to say no comment.
Right.
But when somebody says no comment, especially if there are clearly some strange things going on, the people think, well, wait a minute, this company's hiding something. Where there's smoke, there's fire.
Right.
No comment. Why isn't the company talking about this? Our own data shows that 94% of Japanese consumers interpret a socially responsible corporation as a company that stands behind the quality of its products and services when something goes wrong.
I see.
So we usually counsel an aggressive defense of what you've done right, unless clearly you've done something wrong.
Can you give any examples of companies that have done a great job of handling a crisis, particularly in this market in Japan?
Well, I think actually it's very difficult to do that because most of the crises that people would have heard about are ones that weren't well handled. All of our best crisis case studies are successful preparation. It was well managed and it didn't make it into the newspapers.
It's very quiet, right?
Absolutely, that's right.
So as a PR agency, your job is, in this situation, is to keep your client out of the press, out of the newspaper. In many ways, the way you operate, you're trying to get customers to promote their companies, for example, in the press, in addition to advertising. But in a crisis, in that case, you're trying to do the opposite. You're advising them in a way that doesn't get the problem into the press.
Unless it's a problem so horrible and so alarming and touching upon millions of consumers where they really have to come out in a very high-profile way and put the spotlight on it.
Yeah.
Of course, the world's most famous example is the Tylenol recall
Yes.
in the United States when there was some product tampering. And to reassure consumers, Tylenol pulled a gigantic financial cost, all the product off the shelves, and then replaced it. That would be the number one best case study of the so-called CAP formula, which we advise our clients to follow. C means show concern.
Yes.
You're more concerned with people than about profit. A, action, the things you're actually doing to fix the problem. And P, or preparedness. Here's what we're learning from this situation to make sure that this should never, ever happen again.
Right. One of the things that strikes me in Japan, I've been here a long time, is that one's impression of the way Japanese companies operate is that they're very structured, standardized, people do things by the book.
Right.
But when crises occur, it's usually because people haven't.
Yeah.
And not only that they haven't, but there haven't even been the processes in place.
Right.
The rule book was thrown out of the window years ago. People have kind of made it up as they've gone along. That to me is a big surprise. And I guess in that kind of situation, is Edelman stepping in and helping a company recreate those rules, for example?
Well, that's a very interesting cultural question because in a crisis, especially during a crisis, there's no real time for corporate democracy. What a company needs is a coherent chain of command. Decisions must be made fast. Hierarchy counts in that situation. There must be many voices, many minds around the table, but in the end, only one voice, the CEO, speaks for the company. I think because of the traditional decision authority system, management system of a Japanese company, there may be actually a cultural advantage there compared to a more horizontal or matrixed American company where there's more of a tradition of carefully consulting more people and where there's different zones of authority compared to a Japanese company.
But if I think about Japanese big corporations, large corporations, the top guy has often gotten there because he's been in the company for 30 years.
Correct.
He's gradually crept up through the ranks. He hasn't made many enemies. He's been a good consensus builder. So at the end of the day, he may not always be the best spokesperson for the company.
Sometimes not, no.
So in a crisis, I guess, particularly within your profession, there must be some frustration sometimes that the president is not the best guy to be communicating the problem publicly, but at the same time, I guess the public wants to see the head of the company taking responsibility. I mean, how do you handle that, or how do you advise clients in that situation?
It depends on the magnitude of the crisis issue being dealt with. In general, look at an airline situation. If there's a plane crash, does the CEO come out to the podium at a news conference to talk about what happened? The dates, the facts, the figure. No. Usually a designated corporate spokesperson will come out and provide what we call the company holding statement. I mean, the first 60 minutes in